Today I wanted to talk briefly about masculinity and how that fits into spiritual awakening, and just maybe give some insight and clarity into how I see masculinity, and also how I can confidently say how I've managed to find peace with my masculinity. And it's definitely an area I feel extremely comfortable and content in. So I feel I can offer some insight and hopefully it can help you. The reason why as well I wanted to talk about it is because I noticed it's not something I think about or it even comes to my attention. I noticed a lot of the teachers I used to follow when I was younger and I am drawn to, such as Buddha, Jesus, Ramana Maharshi, maybe even some modern teachers like Rupert Spira, they don't really talk about masculinity much. Obviously, some of the teachers I mentioned are a little bit older and some of them are no longer here, so it's really hard to say what they really said, but just what was said of them. However, I just wanted to add, I noticed that isn't a topic that they talk about much, and I think I know why, and I think it's also to do with why it's not a topic that I seem to resonate so much with. And I contemplated on this, and I realised it used to be, and I figured out what's happened, and I figured out why I've managed to find total peace with my so-called masculinity. And I just want to also add, like, insight number one, I guess you could say, is that masculinity is a concept we have invented to call, or at least ground, the differences between a man and a woman. And we need some kind of difference or polarity to be able to attach to make us feel that we have our own separate identity, which is fine. But what that is a little bit of an unknown. We have kind of, in a sense, made it up. Anyway, that's a bit abstract, but I think if you contemplate and meditate deeply enough on that, you'll realize that actually at the heart of it is true. There's no actual necessarily such thing as masculinity, and it is, again, just another illusion to peel back through. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in a second, and how I've actually managed to free myself of free myself of the burden of it. Because it seems to me nowadays that masculinity is definitely a hot topic, especially on social media. You hear people talking about men's suicide, which is tragic, but you also just hear a lot about how men feel lost nowadays. And I can definitely relate to that. And, rewind 15 years ago, I was like one of those guys. I felt a bit lost and a bit hopeless, really, when it came to being what society says a man. However, the first step that I took massive action on that. So I used to be shy, undecisive. I still struggle with that, but let's just say undecisive. Kind of adding a caveat to that because I can be undecisive. Didn't go for what I wanted. Self-esteem issues, inability to socialize with people, just these kind of issues that were holding me back. And I just took huge action to change that. I wasn't happy with most of the areas of my life. And I just spent 4 or 5 years doing what I thought would be best for me in that time to change that. And I was deeply into self-help, used to read. I was almost like a student of self-help, and I just read books all the time and, hustle and spend all my time trying to be a better person, right? And it kind of all came crashing down after I started to actually gain success in what it meant to be a man, where I was confident around people, I was decisive, things were going well, but I felt still that hole in that bucket was still there, and I still felt very hollow and insecure as well at the same time. And this is where I gained a really deep understanding that all this material stuff doesn't really make me happy. So at the time I was also looking into spiritual awakening and spirituality, and then I was like, well, I've got so far in this journey, I've spent all my effort in self-improvement, let's go into self-transcendence. And then I put my attention and energy into that. And that's when I had a really deep transcendent experience. I had one that was really clear and obvious, but then also a couple that creeped up on me, where you basically gain insight into that you're more than your identity as a man, as a person, as a human. You realize that, yes, you are this human, but then there's also a massive other side to you that isn't so clear. And I gained clarity on what that is. And then that actually started to become more and more, and it still is an ever unfolding process. It's starting to become actually a living moment-to-moment experience within my direct reality. And that moment of realizing that this identity that I am and what I do with it can only take me so far, and it can't lead me to full happiness, which is what the identity wants, which is ironic, that its true nature is what it's looking for. And then once that's found, it's like a deepening into understanding what that is. And once that shift starts to happen, let's take, masculinity and what it means to be a man. It completely shakes that foundation. In fact, it destroys it, because you realize you're not technically a man. You're something else. And obviously spiritual awakening is where you go and try and find out what that is. You're like, okay, I'm not a man. All right, what am I? Or I'm not just a man. So you find that out, and it takes the pressure off. It takes the edge off. And initially it did for me. And then it just starts to bleed more and more into your life, where it doesn't really matter that much anymore, because you kind of know who you are, and you get your fulfillment in knowing who you are, knowing you're this consciousness, this mysterious consciousness in the foreground, in the background of your reality. And then you start to realize it is everything, but that's for another time. But yes, it frees you. So I realized that's kind of like the missing component in why men are so lost, why people are so lost. It just comes back to that same foundation, is because they don't know who they really are. They're lost they're trying to find it in identity constructs that are actually manufactured by society, being strong or being decisive or having abundance, having success, all this kind of stuff. And you think you need it, like a fast car or a good looking partner, or just like these really shallow, I wouldn't even say goals, but just shallow aspirations. And they just don't really give you lasting fulfillment. So yeah, once that realization happened, it changed. And I haven't looked back since. And when it comes to being a man, and whatever that means, I don't worry about it anymore. It's not a thing that I really care about at all. I'll have zero care about it. I have an interest in it, a joy about it. I love going to the gym. I love doing masculine things, not because I want to be masculine, just because I enjoy doing masculine things. I also enjoy doing some feminine things as well, whatever that means. I like to relax, go to spas, do float tanks, whatever, meditate, I guess, do yoga. But yeah, at the same time, I like to do mixed martial arts, wrestling, gym, running, facing my fears, all this kind of stuff. But it's not tied to my identity anymore. And actually, by doing these kind of contrasting hobbies, you start to realize that as well, another part of you is you are like water. Your identity is constructed in your brain, so you can make it however you want it to be. And I think I'll add Bruce Lee's quote in here: be like water. That's true masculinity, is to become formless. I think that absolutely at its essence, if you want to be a man, you want to be at your absolute most pivotal, if you want to be a man, you want to be at your absolute most powerful form, is to be formless, to be able to mold and adapt into any situation, and also become your true essence, because your true essence is formless. Your consciousness is formless, which is actually what your identity really is. So that insight can really help with this word of men's work. And I think maybe that could be the missing link here. And it could be the antidote to all this suffering that men are going through at the moment. And also with things like mental health, to come into an insight that your true nature is what you're really looking for, cured all my angst, or at least gave me the answer to my angst. I know now what I need to do if I am feeling down or depressed or unfulfilled or needy or sad or whatever it is. I just need to look within, see who I really am, and it's all good. Get back to it. So this obviously as well, someone hearing this who hasn't explored this idea of spiritual awakening, hopefully it might inspire you. So if you are deeply into men's work and becoming more of a man and becoming more secure in yourself, look into this, give it a go. Spend some time doing self-inquiry, which maybe I'll put a link or Actually, I haven't done a video yet on self-inquiry, but maybe we can do some practices and find out what that is and how to find your true self. And then you'll realize the power that exists within you, within anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be the weakest person physically, but your spirit is literally unbreakable. And that's true masculinity, right? To become purely unbreakable, purely beyond this earthly realm, right? If you haven't looked into this, like I say, hopefully this is an invitation for you to do so. And I want to also add a caveat that it's not to use this as a bypass and be like, oh, well, you know, I'm formless, I'm just going to become bone idle and apathetic and just sit around all day and not do anything and use that as a mental excuse. No, it has to become a moment-to-moment experience for you that that's the truth. So if you're sat around unsure about who you really are and you're feeling insecure and you feel like you don't have your place in the world yet, well, you just haven't really brought out your superpower, your consciousness that exists within you. You need to bring that out, and your relationship with being a man will become so much more powerful. But I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope you become solid in your masculinity for all the men watching. And if you're female, the same principles apply. The same principles apply. So great. Have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next video.